Hey everyone, this is Roger from InternetDragons.tv with a Guild Wars video for you. I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about Guild Wars 2's November event while we're still in November. It's not that it took me very long to gather my thoughts, but rather that I've been busy. Now, this event follows hot on the heels of what was arguably a phenomenal Halloween event, and I say arguably simply because though the lead-up was fantastic, I thought the event fell flat on its face the last day with nothing more than a Simon Says game as a climax. So for November, ArenaNet released a one-time event, which also included permanent additions to PvP, a new dungeon, new items, new zone, etc. Now, looking at all of these additions as merely free updates to the game, you'd have to be quite the asshole to complain. Constructive criticism is one thing, but complaining over a bunch of free stuff added to the game is an action best reserved for the official forums. Now, that said, what I wanted to discuss mainly was the actual event which occurred a couple of weekends ago. Now, despite having the ability to immediately advise clients via on-screen prompts whenever something important is happening, ArenaNet has chosen to use the mail system. So in order to follow along with the story, you had to keep an eye on your mailbox, and if it happened to be full, then you were shit out of luck. To be honest, most of the people I know followed the advice of Guild Wars 2's Twitter account to know where they should be going. And well, that's just wrong. We shouldn't have to bounce out of game, pull up our Twitter client, and scroll till we find the Guild Wars 2 entry, which tells us to head over to the lighthouse. And that's where our fun started. Oh, sorry, did I say fun? I meant complete and utter frustration with not being able to control our characters, cast spells, or even be able to tell what in the hell was happening. At this point, waves of Kharkov swarmed the shores, their ultimate goal apparently being the complete and utter destruction of Lion's Arch. I'm guessing, much like us, the incessant drone of certain mouthy NPCs have driven them over the edge, their repeated quote-unquote random dialogue pulsing through the water to the depths of where the Karka must call home. Unfortunately, ArenaNet did not plan this event well at all. The servers weren't prepared for a hub of activity of this scope, especially considering the extras from the Refer a Friend, who could not have possibly been impressed with the lag. Now, most people were not able to control their characters to the point of only being able to cast 1 out of every 10 spells. Moving was also problematic because you'd hit a bad lag spike and suddenly find yourself under the heel of a champion Karka. And speaking of Champion Karka, or even the Ancient Karka, if you found yourself in an overflow server and thought you had it made because you could actually use your spells and you could move around, you quickly found out that the lack of other players actually made it damn near impossible to take these things down. You'd get one down to 3/4 health and it would simply heal right back up. And it has been said many times with ArenaNet, their idea apparently of a boss fight is not to add a variety of different mechanics and phases, but rather just to multiply the creature's health points by a random number. It's like they have a bag of dice and just roll them and multiply the creature's HP by the total roll. It's like, hey Bob, this is an Ancient Karka, want to grab me an extra couple of dice? Now, I got to the point where folks were giving up on the overflow server that I was in, as we all believed the Karka was bugged. I jumped into another overflow server wherein the event had already completed. So from there, I logged in and out till I found one where the fight was manageable and nearly done. Not that it mattered. There was no big finish except for the lighthouse taking a beating. Now, from there, we had a few new NPCs to chat with who sent you on a variety of intel and gathering quests to get some information and some items to fight the Karka. Now, you're sent to Caledon Forest to rescue a Qui-Gon, and Kessex Hills, and then Metrica Province, and these quests weren't very inspired overall. There's a bit of lore attached to them, which is nice, but the point of them was to open up the Champions Council Commendation vendor, who had many goodies for levels 40, 60, and 80. Now, when you completed the quest, you were given 5 such commendations and told that you can head over to the Forge to donate items to the cause in order to gain yet more commendations. Now, slap in a donations voucher and 3 items of the same approximate level and quality, and you'll get a certain amount of commendations, which you can then put towards picking up these slick new weapons from the vendor. So let's go over some of these items now. So what we have here is my Char Warrior, who happens to be my biggest character, and the only reason I chose him is because you get then a good sense of what the weapons actually look like. I've got him in his ridiculous town clothes, because I haven't bothered getting him any actual town clothes, and with the exception of the witch's mask from Halloween, which was one of the items that you could pick up for the suit, and I thought that the face mask actually looked fantastic on him. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of the weapons here. Well, actually, we're going to go through all of the level 40 weapons. You can tell that they cost 25 of those commendations, which is really not a lot. So let's take a quick look at just the skins, so what they look like. And we'll start off with the one-handed axe. And you can see a lot of them have this same theme of the lion on them. So it's a lion's arch kind of weapon. And they have the same kind of gold hint to them with some red on it. Here's the dagger that you can see. Now, if this is not something that you feel is going to be something that matches the character's clothes that you have, here we have the focus, then it might not be the best thing for you to get. Now, here is the great sword for him that is just absolutely phenomenal. It's just beautiful. My son actually saved up just so that he could get that on his little Asura Mesmer, and I have to say it justifiably looks fantastic. And actually, the greatsword on the Mesmer has some really cool spells that you can use. This is one of my favorite. It is the two-handed hammer mace. It looks phenomenal. You really get a good sense of what the lion head looks like there. And then here is your spear, which is of course underwater, which I think that one looks fantastic as well. Next up, we've got the bow. You can see here, you got the lion's faces on the along the bow. Again, these are only the level 40s, and then there are level 60s and 80s as well. So it is something that is useful because you can actually use it for the stats at those levels, and then later on you can use the cube so that you can keep the style for your other weapons if in fact you do like it. Here is the one-handed mace that you can use. Good weapon for a warrior, so it is handy. Here is the pistol, which I think looks phenomenal. I actually picked up 2 of those suckers for my thief just because I love thief with pistols. And of course the rifle looks even better. The rifle is just utterly gorgeous. I've actually picked up 2 of these on different characters just because I love the style that much. It is just absolutely beautiful. Moving on, we've got the scepter, which is again decent. I'm not that crazy about it. The shield is nice. It's a very nice shield. You can see here, obviously, fairly large, although I think it pales in comparison to the Halloween event shield, which was, of course, the ghastly skin one, which is going for anywhere from 30 gold or so on the auction house right now. I mean, it's still nice, has fantastic stats, but it's not that great for me in terms of the look. I much prefer the other one. This here is the short bow. So it's got the slightly different look from the long bow, but still very familiar, obviously. Moving on from there, we've got the the cannon, it's called, and it's of course the harpoon gun. So it is for underwater again, good stats, and it is just as gorgeous as the rifle. It's the same skin. I think it looks absolutely beautiful. The staff is actually one that I'm a little disappointed in. It's really not all that thrilling, and the lion head at the top is fairly small now, especially on a small Asura, which is who I bought mine for, my little elementalist. It's barely noticeable at all. I'm fairly disappointed in it. This is the one-handed sword, which is quite nice. I actually have the flaming sword, Ritlot's sword from the Hall of Monuments, so there's no way in hell I'm using anything other than that for the life of the game, quite likely. But it is still a very nice one-handed sword. The torch is also very cool looking. I didn't get to see what it actually looks like when it is lit and used. Some of them look slightly different and not just fire. So the trident, same skin as the staff, so again, not that thrilled with it. The war horn, however, is beautiful. Really, really, absolutely gorgeous. The use of the red and the gold together, again, it looks great. Plus with the mouth open at the end, where of course the sound would be coming out. I love it. I picked one up almost immediately for my ranger because I do use the war horn quite a bit on my ranger. I love it. And that's it. And then we're down back again for the one-handed axe, and that is for the level 60 weapons. And then, of course, you scroll down and then you see the level 80s as well. So the level 60s go for 40, and then you're looking at 1,300 commendations for the higher level stuff with the stats, or if you just want the skin, it's quite a bit cheaper. So that is it for all of the items. You can also pick up these items from a karma vendor in Lion's Arch. She sells them for 9,800 karma, which isn't bad if you're swimming in karma, if you don't have any spare greens that you'd like to dump into the forge. Now let's be very honest here. This is a means of controlling the economy. A lot less uncommons, rares, and exotics in people's banks and in the trading post is a means of dropping a growing economy and attempting to stabilize it after the Halloween loot fest. If folks are destroying all of those items versus selling them, that decreases the global coin purse. I'm not against this, but let's call a horse. And in this case, this horse cleared damn near all of the grains out of my bank. I did purchase a number of these rares, though none of the exotics, as all I care about is their appearance. Now from here we were told, once again via Twitter, to check out where the catapult was being built for the next part of the event the following day. This event started at 3 p.m. However, depending on which overflow server you found yourself in, you may have been waiting for 45 friggin' minutes as this damn catapult was being built by Norns who constantly took breaks to get plastered on ale sold by a nearby vendor, whom I wanted to kick in the nads so very badly. 45 friggin' minutes waiting for an event to kick off. Honestly, bravo ArenaNet, bravo. Once done, along came more Karka, which we had to kill. Sound familiar? Well, it should. It was essentially the very same event. Now, once all of those bastards had been killed and sliced up by the local sushi chef, we were told, oh hi Twitter, to head to the docks and set sail for a new item. Now, 3 guesses what we found on the island. No, really. 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't count. Karka, and lots of Karka. Now this, of course, was to be expected. It is a Karka invasion, don't you know? The island is swimming in Karka. See what I did there? Island, swimming. Anyways, I figured this would be the grinding equivalent of the Halloween labyrinth. However, I was dead wrong. Often. The loot was atrocious. Some might even say non-existent. And the experience was trivial with the exception of the few events scattered here and there. Now don't get me wrong, from a design perspective, the island looks cool as hell. There's just no variety to speak of in terms of the creatures and the encounters. There are a few extra jumping challenges for folks who are into those damn things. I am not one of those. I always try a couple of times and in an old man voice exclaim, "This is what passes for fun nowadays," as I fall to my death. And by old man voice, I mean my voice. So day 2 of this one-time weekend event was shaping up to be a boring bust. Words I don't often string together. Now my hopes were set for really high for Sunday's closing. Obviously, we were going to have to fight the granddaddy of all Karka, but I was ever hopeful that there'd be a variety of mechanics included in the fight. My optimism kicked me in the balls, and then mocked my tears, and then spit on me. God, I hope that was spit. This final event lasted hours, not just 1 or 2, many hours, killing too freaking many Karka, one after another, all the way to the inner hive thingy, where lag kicked back into high gear on most people's computers, forcing insta-death for the majority of players whenever a champion barrel rolled us. The point was to escort some explosive experts to the bottom to lay some mines for the uber ancient. Now once done, we had, of course, to work our way back up to the top of the hive, fighting wave after wave of Karka along the way. At one point, we found ourselves outside the hive, pushing the ancient Karka back to where the mines were laid. Now, all in all, it was brutally long. It was just a long, drawn-out fight. I mean, it was challenging, sure, but boring as crap. There was simply not enough variety to the fights. Even the very last fight turned into nothing more than a tank and spank till the ground opened up and swallowed up the final Karka. Ooh. Now, despite the lack of enthusiasm for the fight, I can tell you that we were all very, very thrilled with the loot we received, however. We got exotics and rares along with a fantastic 20-slot exotic bag. Now, some people even got legendary precursors. Now, taking all of this into consideration, however, was the event worth the time investment? Hell no. Now, unless you had absolutely nothing else to do during each of these events, I would not have recommended them. They were not properly planned out beforehand to ensure a lag-free event. They also had a lot of flaws in terms of the concepts involved in various mechanics, and it was boring overall. Very, very boring. Now, luckily, I ran all of these with my youngest son, so we actually managed to have some fun. But the fun wasn't because of the game mechanics which ArenaNet set up, but rather silly fun, which we created ourselves to keep ourselves occupied throughout this weekend. This was especially disappointing when considering just how absolutely amazing the Halloween event was this year. Now, that said though, being a longtime Guild Wars fan, I know that this is not the norm for ArenaNet, and that with more careful planning, future events will be much smoother and more engaging. As I said, I understand your expectations have to be low when gauging the quality of a one-time event. However, I think that constructive criticism is still appropriate. I'm not bitching and moaning, hell no. This was all free, with the exception of the variety of trading post purchases, of which I made a lot less than I did at Halloween. And this does not speak to the new dungeons, Fractals of the Mists, which was very interesting at points, though it too failed miserably during some of the boss fights. I'm looking at you, Mr. Jellyfish. So how would I rate this event, assigning random numbers for the sake of making a review easy to grasp? Honestly, I'd be hard-pressed to give it anything over a 5. Again, I know that this was just a one-time event. However, this is a design choice that ArenaNet set for the game. They're the ones that said they will be creating these fantastic one-time events for us to during the lifetime of the game. It's not like we demanded this of them. So as such, we have to rate it based on what it is, not just that it is a one-time event. And overall, it was a lot of crap, let's be honest. Now, the flip side of this coin is grading the update as a whole, including the event, the new PvP, the new dungeon, the new item, the new zones, etc., which all dropped on our laps for friggin' free. That, my friends, gets a much higher ranking. See, this would get an easy 8 or 9 out of 10 simply for introducing a ton of new content so soon after launch. Again, for free. Now the question is, will I be taking part in December's event, which is going to be Winter's Day, the Winter's Workshop of Toymaker Tix? The answer is, of course I will. I just hope that ArenaNet is taking note of their player base's suggestions based on this month's event. I'm not talking about the forum whiners. I'm talking about folks who are trying to provide well thought out critiques and suggestions. There's room for improvement here, guys. Thanks for listening, guys. If you would like to see more of what we have to offer, subscribe to this channel or head over to internetdragons.tv. You can also follow us on Twitter at InternetDragons. Take care.